who routinely issued politically motivated verdicts against opposition figures, independent journalists, human rights defenders, and now they are responsible for ruling on cases involving Armenian political and military leaders, cases that are deeply tied to Azerbaijani nationalist agenda and very sensitive issue of Nagorno Karabakh conflict. So there is no scenario in which an Azerbaijani judge operating in an environment of systemic discrimination against Armenians or anti-Armenian sentiment could deliver an impartial ruling. However, we can pinpoint specific aspects of fair trial guarantees which were violated in multiple ways. Denial of legal representation is one aspect. Defense lawyers are either state appointed and act in line with political directives, or are independent lawyers who face persecution for taking on sensitive cases. So private attorneys are frequently disbarred, imprisoned, threatened, making legal defense nearly impossible. The International Commission of Jurists has reported that Azerbaijan suppresses independent legal representation. Besides, those trials operate under an assumption of guilt rather than an impartial examination of facts. The legal proceedings are structured to justify Azerbaijani government narrative on Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Defendants and their lawyers are often denied access to case materials or receive inadequate translations, inadequate time, which prevents them from proper preparation and presentation of cases. Defense witnesses are not permitted to testify, leaving the prosecution's claims unchallenged. Apart from that, we have these controlled secret proceedings. Independent journalists, human rights organizations, international observers are barred from attending those trials, hearings. Only state-approved individuals are approved inside the courtroom. So we receive information from one side, and this partial biased information is leaked to the public. Trials are conducted without monitoring proceedings, and also access to key evidence is not provided or publicized under the pretext of national security. Even during those trials, we have heard allegations about torture. We have seen photos of Ruben Vardanyan with visible injuries, but without any reaction from judges. International human rights standards require where a person is taken under state custody in a good health condition without visible injuries, but receives, there are signs of visible injuries there, an investigation should be open to understand the causes. And the burden is on state authorities to deny any version of torture. But we have seen that no actions were taken by judges to understand the causes of visible injuries during those trials. In this environment, there is no doubt that Armenian detainees are being subjected to sham trials designed to serve Azerbaijani political objectives. They are about consolidating Azerbaijani narrative, silencing Armenian voices, and legitimizing human rights abuses under the pretext of legal proceedings.
Thank you, Siranush. Time is marching on, and we want to leave time for questions from our audience. So I'd like to direct a question to the whole group. A few days ago, an opinion was publicly released by the UN Human Rights Council's Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. It was actually filed 4 months ago, but it wasn't made public until a few days ago. So it was filed before the trials began, before the ICRC was excluded from working in Azerbaijan. But this opinion sided with the Azerbaijani government against the lawyers of Ruben Vardanyan, maybe the most prominent of the 23 detainees, and considers that his case is not one of arbitrary detention. I'd like to ask all three of you, what do you make of this opinion?
Well, as you know, a working group is made of independent experts. Not all of them are knowledgeable of the region, so aspects and specific challenges and conflicts. But I would say a few words from a legal standpoint. If you look at the conclusion of this working group, they have examined this case without taking consideration for the context of the case, the one that I have explained just before. That's first, but more importantly, it comes in opposition to 10 years of reports, resolution, expert opinions saying that there is real ethnic discrimination against Armenians in Azerbaijan. And so starting from the ECRI, which is the European body against racial discrimination, continuing with CERD, with the Committee Against Torture, which last year mentioned very strongly the torture treatment of prisoners, but with a specific mention of Armenian prisoners. The European Parliament passed a few resolutions specifying this ethnic discrimination, and above all, the International Court of Justice, which is currently judging about the interstate claim from Armenia against Azerbaijan, on the basis of the International Convention on Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, has adopted temporary measures precisely on recognizing there is a plausibility of racial discrimination against Armenians, and indicating these measures to protect all Armenians from this racial discrimination. And even during the debates at the International Court of Justice, Azerbaijan government has recognized some of the facts and committed to withdraw some of the measures that they had taken, especially at the end of the war in November 2020. They had created a museum in Baku, showing in a very indelicate manner, exposing the Armenians there. And Baku recognized before the court that it was inappropriate, and they withdraw what they have said, and what they have made. Even Azerbaijan government recognized this racial discrimination. So it comes to a very big surprise, that kind of opinion.
I may comment further. So it is more than 4 months old, and some developments happened which are not reflected anyhow in the court's opinion. Specifically, it occurred before the transfer of Ruben Vardanyan's case to Baku military court, and blatant due process abuses, which we are raising also today. And the working group has a long set position that military courts aren't competent to try civilians, and military judges, prosecutors aren't independent or impartial to prosecute such cases. So we should be mindful of those developments, which were not the situation at the moment when this opinion was given. But I would agree with Philip that the working group disregarded the context of a conflict, and here we have a consensus within international community. Particularly, UN Security Council addressed the situation in Nagorno Karabakh, and resolution has never gone so far to question the lawfulness of declaration of independence of Nagorno Karabakh, or to call the international community not to recognize its declaration. And I would like to contrast this situation with other existing situations across the globe. The Cyprus situation, where Security Council Resolution 541 explicitly deplored the declaration of the Turkish Cypriot authorities as invalid. And Security Council further called upon all states not to recognize any Cypriot state other than the Republic of Cyprus. We had similar way of reaction to invalid declarations in the case of Southern Rhodesia, where it declared to call upon states not to recognize this illegal racist minority regime in Southern Rhodesia, and called all states not to entertain any diplomatic or other relations with it. So this is not the case with Nagorno-Karabakh. We even have this OSCE Minsk group, which received powers from UN Security Council to deal with the situation. And the leaders of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic were part of international talks. Moreover, this regime received financial support, including from US government and so on. So it is very logical to expect that foreign states or international organizations were providing financial support to so-called terrorist regimes. Thank you.
Okay, it worked. Just maybe to reiterate the fact that the case was considered completely in isolation without taking the context into the consideration, but also to highlight, as you mentioned, the opinion was prepared months ago, but the way that Azerbaijan's government is communicating about it is using misinterpreting. So it's about false information as well, but misinterpreting, saying that the working group has confirmed that the trials are according human rights standards and they're fair and all that. So it's also important for the international community to see how the misinterpretation works and how Azeri government is using even in this situation.
Thank you all. Now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Please keep your questions brief, to the point. I'm going to try to set a timer for 1 minute. We'll see if I manage. But while I'm working on this, does anyone have a question for our panelists today? Yes, Thibault.
Yes, thank you for all your interventions. So actually I have two questions, one historical and one political. The first one regarding Armenia's declaration of independence in 1990, and the thing about reunification with Nagorno Karabakh, which seems to be the main stumbling block with the peace treaty with Azerbaijan. So why this reunification has not been achieved in the early 90s, when Armenia was militarily stronger than Azerbaijan. Maybe it was a good opportunity at this time. Now it seems that it's too late to have Nagorno Karabakh as part of the Armenian state. And the second question is how we could still believe in an Armenian Nagorno Karabakh when it seems that only members of the European Parliament and the one of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe defend the Armenians, and the heads of states and the European Commission, they prefer economic ties with Azerbaijan, and Armenia itself seems to have given the fight. Thank you.
I will start. On the political aspect regarding the declaration of independence and the reunification, we cannot say anything today because unfortunately this is a lost opportunity for Armenia. But that shows that the issue was not only a question of self-determination, but it was a real national project coming from the history of relations between Armenia and Nagorno Karabakh. I want to remind everybody that this region of Nagorno Karabakh was inhabited by Armenians even before the creation of both Armenian republics and Azerbaijani republics. They have always been independent region, mountainous region. And this is at the occasion of a decision of a communist party for the South Caucasus, which in July 1921, it has been decided that this region should be annexed to, put under the umbrella of Azerbaijan, Soviet Republic. At that time, there were some conflicts between some Muslim groups and Christian groups in the Soviet Union. So it was a way to appease these conflicts. But the Soviet Republic of Armenia always claimed the reintegration of Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia all along the years of Soviet Union. And second most important aspect is that from 1923, this region has always have a status of autonomous region in the Soviet constitutions. So they have never been under full control of Azerbaijan. And so if you look at the 100 years of history, they have never been directly administered by Azerbaijan. So from the legal aspect, in fact, very few countries, so the third states, but also Armenia, also today claim the return of Artsakh Armenian in Nagorno-Karabakh. But as lawyers and lawyers representing the interest of the Artsakh people, this is our duty to defend their rights, because the right to return of these people is absolute and recognized by international law. And there are many precedents in international jurisdiction, so confirming this right to return of people who have been forced, who have been subjected to forced displacement. So there is no question. The legal fight will continue, because this is for the legacy of humanity and for the legacy of Artsakh people rights.
Thank you, Philippe. Are there other questions from the floor? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of the International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute. We are currently undertaking a review of the independence of the Azerbaijani Bar Association. As far as you're aware, what is the position of the Azerbaijani Bar Association on the continued detention and the sham trials of ethnic Armenians?
Sorry.
Yes,
So we are not aware of any reaction. So their approach is to be silent on this sensitive matter. What we can confirm that we, as lawyers representing some of prisoners of war who are currently in Baku, were unable to access Azerbaijan and visit our clients. And there is an absolute right as a part of a right to fair trial to have confidential, unhindered, unlimited visits with a lawyer, attorney representing. And we do have power of attorneys, which were given by the families of prisoners of war. Those powers of attorneys were adduced to International Regional Court, European Court of Human Rights. Our powers were recognized by the court. The court is in a communication with us. However, our powers are not being respected by Azerbaijani government. And so far, we are deprived of any possibility to communicate to our clients, even through phones, through online meetings, and so on.
Aspect of your question, we have tried to hire independent attorneys in Azerbaijan, so not state attorneys, for our clients. They are scared to take the cases of ethnic Armenians, and because if they do it, they are considered as traitors to the nation, and of course their business will be affected by if they do that. But beyond this, they told us that even if they accept to take the defense of these people, it will not change the course of the trials. The only positive benefit would be a better communication with the client, but that's all. They refused to be hired for providing a real legal defense.
Okay, it worked. Just to add very briefly, I wanted to comment along the lines as Philip mentioned, the fact that in general, the crackdown of the legal profession, disbarment of lawyers who have voiced any anti-government, they have had anti-government sentiments. But also, if we look at some of the reasons for political prisoners. At the moment, there are around 360 political prisoners, Azeri political prisoners, to clarify. And some of them are those, especially as Philip mentioned, those that have either spoken against the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan or have had any contact with Armenians. They've been charged with treason. So for the bar to publicly make any statement, it would really mean that they want to go against the government and take the consequences.
Thank you all. That concludes our session for today. Thank you for coming. There are sandwiches on the way out. Please help yourselves and have a good rest of the Human Rights Council.